Very good. Thank you. I notice we are literally experiencing climate change in the room, for those of you already. So well done. If you need to pass out, that's fine. Try and do it discreetly. Very good. Look, we're going to go through, we've only got half an hour together, so we'll try and go at some pace, and you know what climate change timelines are like, and apparently we just missed the previous one. So let's go through that. What we're going to do is just to give you a sense of we'll try and do it at some pace. Obviously we'll think about behavioural and communications issues. Everyone will know the basic stat. 62% of CCC estimates 62% of what we need to do on climate change involves some aspect of behavioural change, normally, often product adoption. So against that kind of background, we've got quite a lot of work to do we not? The structure we're going to follow quite briefly, you just had the cursory introductions, is we're going to get our panel to think about three things, and maybe you will too. First of all, they're going to tell us about some things they're already doing, which is really cool, exciting stuff that everyone should know about. Then we ask them about what are they going to do, which is even more exciting possibly, that we might want to know about. We get a few questions in, and then we're also going to return to what could they do if there was some other block removed, right? So that's what we're going to try and do. That's the arc of the argument, folks. You got it in your head, so let's follow it. With that in mind, Pete.
Hello.
Let's go for it.
Hi.
What are you doing that's amazing we should all know about?
Fantastic and excellent question. I mean, so at Octopus Energy, we're always trying new stuff out, trying new innovative programs, but I think the thing that I'm probably most proud of that we've done recently that was kind of quite interesting was around the energy price crisis. So it's no surprise to anyone in the room that we are slowly emerging from a time when energy bills have been at absolutely astronomical highs. And we've had a lot of customers struggling with them. And so we were looking a lot at how can we help customers through this, through behaviour change, and had the incredible realisation that actually one of the fixes could be as simple as distributing electric blankets to customers. And I know what a lot of people think, oh, an electricity company giving out electric blankets, what a cunning idea. But what is actually really interesting about this is for people who are living at home, who are more likely to be vulnerable, less likely to be able to pay their energy bills, an electric blanket can be transformative. It can reduce a person's energy bill by 17% just because they're warming themselves instead of the entire space. And so we thought, how can we very quickly get as many electric blankets as possible? We got tens of thousands. We, in fact, made a national shortage of electricity blankets because there simply weren't enough in the UK. And we started distributing them to customers who were vulnerable, who were in more difficult positions, so they could help with their energy bills. Because we have a lot of data about customer consumption and what they're doing and how much they're spending, we could actually track their progress as well. So we knew straight away whether customers were accidentally not using it properly and spending more, and we could intervene. We could also measure exactly how much people were cutting down and saving by, and that's where we get that average number of 17%. So it was something that actually really simply cuts energy consumption, saves on bills, and actually moves something that's traditionally fired by fossil fuels, your boiler or your gas boiler, into something that's run by electricity, which is increasingly green. So it was a real win-win-win, I think, for us, and something I'm very proud of.
I love that example. We tried to, some of you might know, I spent a lot of time in Downing Street and was back in to try and persuade bits of government, isn't this a great idea? Like, what would be the return when you that kind of level of subsidy? And people are like, what are you, crazy? I also wondered, by the way, how big are they? Because presumably the main point is you don't need to heat the whole thing. You just basically need to heat someone's butt, right? Basically.
That's it.
So you make a little one.
Pull it up over you over the couch and you're watching TV, cozy and cozy.
I love it. And it's a great example to get going with because I think people often think behaviour, they think comms only. That's definitely beyond comms. Very good. Becky, you might want to explain a little bit also about what it is you do for our audience, but also tell us what you're doing
around the country. So I'm Becky, co-founder and CEO of Furbnow. And what we do is we help any homeowner through the whole retrofit process. Many of you might know what that means, but basically If you're looking at insulation, if you're looking at solar panels, if you're looking at heat pump, we really don't care. You're probably thinking more about energy bill reduction or comfort in your home anyway to start with. We can help you through that whole journey. And in practice, what we do, we give you a home energy plan, which is your route to net zero or your route to a heat pump. We get you started with insulation, looking at solar panels, and then transitioning to a heat pump at the right time as well. But we don't stop there with the home energy plan. When you're ready, we can do the design, the tendering work, and if you need help with the project management, we help with that too. So the whole point is a platform, a one-stop shop is what it's called a lot, but we'll take you through that whole retrofit journey. And how it kind of connects with this as well is our working hypothesis is most consumers don't really care about heat pumps, and they don't really care about solar panels. They really care about being warm at home. And all of our messaging and all of our research and the customers that we've supported across England come to us because that's what they're looking for. They've been searching for solutions for their problem, which is normally damp, cold, drafty, energy bill too high, and they've been going directly to installers. They might be feeling like they're missold, being told a product they don't actually need. They might have tried going to an architect because it might be a fabric problem, and the architects they're not really skilled up enough to be able to help with the fabric side of things. They're really good at extensions and building regulations, but if it's looking at the existing fabric, not really their expertise. So those are the two main routes, or they might start by going to their energy supplier as well, but most energy suppliers are also just predominantly focused on verticals, so just solar panels or just heat pumps. It doesn't really start at the point where the customer journey is, whereas like I have an issue in my home, how do I solve that? And we take our customers through that entire journey.
That's great. One of the things we debate quite a lot, of course, in our bit of the world is how much sometimes it's price versus something else. And we have a strong hypothesis that a huge amount of what we're seeing is friction. We're obsessed with friction. So do you have any sense of the kind of proportion of people out there who, if you could click your fingers and it was easy, at the current price points, they would do it if you made it easy, but you solved all those problems?
So that is our core customer base at the moment. So we don't have a finance product. Just to be completely open, we're a business that started 18 months ago. We're scaling quite quickly across England. So our availability is across England, not in Scotland or Wales at the moment. And all of our customers are self-financing. They're either using their savings, their loans, adding it on top of other extensions or home improvements, because they have a need. They just can't find the company that's going to help them with doing that next step, which is solving their issue at the end of the day. So like I couldn't put a number on it necessarily, but like the numbers that we're looking at, kind of if you take the big picture number, the total value of homes to be retrofitted, 30,000 per property, there's about a 718 billion pound total spend that needs to be done. If we start to segment that, if we're looking at the kind of able to pay, probably will self-fund or would be motivated, you're still looking at kind of 100 billion, 150 billion pound market opportunity. So
very good.
They're there. We just need to make sure there are more companies like us that are able to support them, and they'll come on to this later, the supply chain to deliver, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Very good. Now, Luke, you local authorities often, when the work was, I don't know if it's me or someone else, a lot of discussion about local authorities and what could be done, and it was almost a tag on it, felt like some of the work running up to the COP. But in principle, you sit in this very trusted intermediate space, but maybe tell us about what it is you do day in day out.
Yeah, and the service will bear that out. People trust us more than central government. But I think my sort of one line would be like small actions as the gateway drug to much bigger changes that are needed, because a lot of these changes are very scary and very unfamiliar. And when they're kind of framed in the climate space, it turns people off immediately. But when it's framed in the, lower heating, lower bills, it's much more appealing. And I think an example of that is, so we ran this program that was sort of styled as a kind of 1 hour insulation challenge. Like we can come to your house in 1 hour, save you £100. Or you can do it yourself, just small things, draft proofing, kind of radiator panels. And it was just about bills. And this was launched in a kind of cost of living reduction way. But we now have 3,500 homes that are kind of some of the poorest in the borough. And those 3,500 homes, they've gone through the process of something has happened in their home. It's changed. It wasn't a disaster. They now got their bills lower. And so now when we turn to these bigger government grants that are available for these homes, when we go to these homes, they're much more kind of responsive. Because for a lot of people, you mentioned, is it price, is it friction? There are a lot of grants available for the poorest homes in our borough that are fully funded, completely funded, and we still can't persuade people to do it. And that's because of it's scary, they don't see why, the disruption. But once we took these small steps and it wasn't a disaster, and actually we got great response from it, now we've got these people that are much more intrigued. And you can think about the same for test driving an EV or trying out a heat pump, or maybe more ambitiously, like if you could stay in a house overnight with a heat pump, maybe that's the better equipped if Airbnb were interested. Like we're thinking about that, like what are the big changes and then what's the smaller change that we can get going on first of all.
Well, while you're on a roll, that was the first question I noticed. Let's edge into what are you going to be doing? Luke, you were sort of stepping into that space. If you look forward for the next 18 months and so on, where does this take you? And indeed, other local authorities, do you think?
Yeah, I think, we have definitely thought a lot about this in terms of kind of the home and kind of retrofitting the home. So it might be kind of slightly obsessed around that, especially with, I think you're going to talk about that as well. But if I think about what the next steps, I do think about kind of the hassle involved in those projects going on. And there's two that we're really interested in. One is a one-stop shop for residents. That's basically what they want. Now, they may not want our company, they may want your company, but you speak to any of them, they just want to go there and speak to one single person and then take it through. So on that, we've kind of launched our own kind of in-house retrofit company. Now, they might not do all the works, but they're the single point of contact, and it goes back to that trust point. You can go to them and they can unlock the grants, but they can also unlock planning and they can kind of help you the whole way. But the second one that I'm really excited about, and it's like definitely something we're exploring, is making the planning process much simpler if you are doing something to your house which is kind of energy efficiency improving, or if you're doing a green project, because the reason it's kind of exciting, so for example, that might be fast tracking the process. So it typically takes 8 weeks to get planning back if you're doing a project. Why wouldn't we be able to do that in half the time if you're doing a green project? And the reason it's clever is because I think for people themselves, it's either like their mental model is planning or no planning, and planning is a very bad outcome, or they want planning. But for the contractors and the projects that do it, having half the determination time is like huge. So they want to kind of do those projects. And it's kind of, you spoke about local authorities, it's one of the key levers we hold. And so how can we turn that into not something that's getting in the way of people who want to do something for the climate, but actually support it?
Can you just clarify, obviously, this particular point about heat pumps, where people are having planning, issues, and it feels like, how much, as a local authority, do you have the discretion to be able to just make that much, much more automatic? If it's below a certain number of decibels, you can do it automatically, or is it going to be the Leylandi of tomorrow, people arguing about, oh my God, I hate your heat pump, your neighbour?
Yeah, I mean, there's, any changes you're doing to your home, there is a level by which it's PD, permitted development, you can just go and do it. And these are kind of set across the board. And then once you enter the planning world, then we're considering other things like your neighbours, the character of the street, and lots of other things, so it comes into it. So yeah, it's very much determined kind of across the board. So that's why we're looking at something we can determine, which is making it not harder for everyone, but easier for the people that are going to do something positive.
Right, Becky, what is for you in the next 18 months? What are you
doing?
Just
more homes. Continuing. So what we've been focusing on the first 18 months of the business is building the platform, basically, that helps us deliver everything and make sure that the customers that we work with get a standardized quality of work and they're really happy with what happens at every stage. So it's mainly been putting all the building blocks in place and getting some of our supply chain partners on board to make sure we're ready for the next step, which is scaling. So most of our focus for the next 18 months is having more partners on the front end. We would love to be a ginormous brand that everyone knows about to come to, but that takes a long time to build, and money, and resources. And our focus is mainly working with other business-to-business partners and also B2G. So we recently did a trial with Birmingham City Council. We work with Warwickshire. So we're based in the Midlands. That's our headquarters. We also have offices in London and Manchester as well. And we're trying to figure out what the feasibility route is to help as many local authorities bring a one-stop shop to their area, but also recognising there's a lot of other opportunities as well. So if you've been rejected from a heat pump, you're probably pretty annoyed, and you might have been thinking and putting that budget aside, but what are you going to do next? And we work with heat pump installers, for example, to take their customers through to the next stage. We're trying to complete that customer journey for a lot of different people.
Okay. Very good. Rejected by a heat pump, worst rom-com ever, possibly. We can come to questions in a second. So, but look, thank you for bringing in the example you did. But what are the other ones you're most excited about? And I know from Greg and who's been speaking here, but it's an amazing array of things you're doing. But what would be top of your wowzer list next?
It is fair to say there's plenty going on, but I think top of my list is really the exciting potential for onshore wind. So we bought a couple of turbines in 2021. And we launched our fan club tariff, which is people around those turbines, when the wind's blowing, get discounted electricity.
Very nice.
Yeah,
the fan club.
When it starts, yeah. There's a lot of puns. Mostly Octopus related. This one's not. And when the wind really picks up, they get 50% off their electricity costs, right? And this was really transformative. I know like lots of people who deal with onshore wind know about this kind of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, people don't want turbines near them. Actually, we've seen when we survey the British population, about 75% of them are quite cool with turbines.
Right.
If you tell them that turbine's going to reduce their energy bills, that's 9 out of 10 people say, I will have a turbine in my home. And so this is transformative. So we asked communities who would like a turbine in their area if it would mean cheaper energy bills, and 15,000 communities said, yes, please. So then we asked landowners if they had a plot of land that we could put a turbine on. And when we merged all that data together and combined it with wind speeds, environmental hazards like areas of natural beauty, avoiding that, grid capacity, we found there's like an opportunity overnight to put in 2.3 gigawatts, whatever that is, of wind, onshore wind. To put that in context, I think Hinkley Point is about 3.2 gigawatts. So it's about 70% of Hinkley Point for about 10% of the cost of Hinkley Point in a fraction of the time. And that, I think, could be really transformative. It's a really exciting thing. So it's not something that we can accelerate by ourselves. There's real problems with grid connections and the red tape around onshore wind, but the potential is massive.
It's very neat. The way to try and how do you move people from NIMBYs to YIMBYs? There's a beautiful old study actually with the US Air Force, which is where, aircraft noise going across make people very annoyed, let alone what it does for the planet. And so they did this thing, basically kind of give out posters and cool stuff that they give to kids and top trumps, right? Because then, of course, it changed. Instead of being it's annoying noise, you're like, oh my God, it's an F-15. How cool is that? So it changes your interpretation. So I love the idea that whenever it's pissy, crappy weather, everybody's going, yes, it's
Get
windy.
in there.
Right, let's get your first round of questions. And do you have any online? Oh, I'm doing them. I thought you were doing them. Okay, fine. All right. All right, very good. Do you have any in the room, or we just... Very good. And then we're going to do one last round.
I'm a private renter. I'd love to be able to do lots of these renovations to my flat. How do you convince landlords to invest in these when they're not getting that direct benefit that I would be if they did it?
Okay, why don't we take a couple? Is there one more in the room? Right, very good. We're expecting a question from over here.
Hi.
You guys somewhere?
I'm Leo from Eden Lab, as an online one as well. I'm really interested to understand why we're not seeing more behaviour change programs at scale across every sector in this room, in this building, because it seems to me that there's a lot of kind of potential there that's not fully exploited.
Okay, and maybe choose one from Mountain Light, and maybe guys just choose one of these each. There's a question from Arthur about batteries. What importance do you put on batteries for flexibility? And we've got a question here. Aren't we seeing more evidence of behaviour change programs applied at scale? What's the blocker? Sorry, why aren't we seeing more at scale? Luke, you look like you're ready to jump in.
Well, I was going to answer this. Well, try and answer this very difficult question on the private rented sector.
I live in Waltham, so as well.
Oh, perfect. Well, I can answer.
He's got a very good deal for you, I'm sure.
I can ask a question back to you. Why didn't you take our zero interest loan? But yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult sector. I mean, I'll bring up this loan. So we launched a zero interest loan if you're kind of doing up your house, zero interest, which, when we launched it seemed less scary, and then when we got around to launching it, interest rates were slightly differently. But people were very excited. We actually got no private landlords coming through, and I think it is very challenging. I went to kind of one landlord forum. There is a paper which shows that once you change the energy efficiency, you can kind of clean that out of higher rents. But I'm in a forum full of landlords, and there's a Cambridge academic paper, and I think they don't believe it. They don't believe it until they see it and see someone else. And I think kind of potential regulations coming in or not coming in really shifts it. I think we have seen some movement with landlords, but it is just a sector that is so difficult unless you can try and break that link and get them to share the proceeds of the reduced things. But again, that takes some policy shifts. So yeah, I sympathise with you, but it's a difficult thing to do.
Becky, do you want to take one of the questions?
I was going to say about the behaviour change ones. I couldn't answer the question of why, but I can talk a little bit about the impact and like what. So Michael, whenever I get asked about what we should be doing, let's not do another cash grant for installations again, because we did that in 2021, the Green Home Grant, and it was done terribly because the supply chain wasn't ready. What we should be doing now, from a policy perspective, is putting programs and generating awareness before we start adding in what's the big push and opening the floodgates. Because not only are consumers not aware of what the options are and what the opportunities to be able to be an educated buyer when going to the supply chain is not ready for the floodgates to be opened as well. So I think behaviour change programmes, I couldn't answer why. I've got some views, I probably can't discuss too much, but that it's essential really for the first step. We should have been doing it before, but the best time to start is now. We need to be generating awareness. And then the impact for companies like ours, and even for Octopus, is that more consumers are aware, which means it's much easier for us to find those customers and get the work done, actually get these things installed in the longer run.
On that thing about why aren't behaviour changes more widespread, I think certainly from the energy industry perspective, a lot of it's seen as like an obligation, like the energy transition is something that happens to consumers or is done on behalf of consumers rather than done in tandem with consumers. And I think that has meant that a lot of businesses have literally gone, okay, we have an obligation, we will meet that obligation, but we will put in the minimal effort required to reach it. And I think it takes a very different mindset to go, actually, where is the competitive advantage in really working hard to make this a consumer-centric proposition? How do we actually engage customers to see real results? But I think we are seeing increasing amounts of it, and I think it will grow as it starts to catch on.
So we're going to try and rattle through one last round and maybe one or two last questions in a second. And we're going to ask you about what are the things that are kind of blocked. But just before we leave this topic, just for what it's worth, now I'm no longer in government, there has also been a kind of techno-optimism within British government.
Yeah.
And an unease about some aspects of behaviour change, I think we can say. And by the way, if the supply chain's not ready, then the question is, what are the behaviour change you can do? So a really interesting question is, apart from 7,500 for the homeowner, but what does it take for the plumber to put their first heat pump in? That could be a much more focused thing to try and increase, as it were, the supply of skills. Anyway, why don't we turn to, should we do it in the kind of same as the original? No, we'll do it in reverse. Let's mix it up.
Let's mix it up.
What would you really like to do, but there's some barrier in the way? And if an incoming government removed that barrier, what would it enable you to then do? What would that be?
Yeah, well, just on the behaviour change thing, it is one thing for individual sectors to do it, but I do think it is missing on the national scale. Like, if you ask people what they think, take these 10 climate actions and rank them in terms of impact, and then you compare that to the actual impact, it's negatively correlated. The ones that they think are higher impact are actually lower impact. And that's partly because all of the people in our borough, when they're recycling, they think it's really high impact. And we don't tell them it's good, but it's not as good as the following things. And so there is a bit of a need for a kind of new government to look at a national level behaviour change strategy and be a bit more, I'm not saying it goes full naggy and tell everyone what to do, but it needs to be a bit more kind of forward and punchy. I think for me, one big change I would love to see is when we look at our housing stock, we own houses and with a landlord sales, and then there's all these in the borough. And there's very long-term return investments that need to happen over 20 years, and then people live in them for an amount of time, this kind of your landlord at the front row here. And there are some policy levers that could unlock that. So the ability for us to be able to charge our residents, our landlord, our council tenants, a fee which covers their energy and what's going on in their house, but isn't actually their energy bill. And we can use the difference to pay off the long-term resident. And the same for people to be able to do a project on the house, maybe Becky, and then leave that house in place such that the investment is still accruing on that house. And when you go and buy that house, there's something that says on there, oh, by the way, there is this payment going off, and be that on local council tax or not. But the money and the investment follows that house and not the person, which has been tried in the US, to break this discontinuity between a very long-term investment and the short-term return. So that's what I'd love to see, and I know they'll be thinking about.
Very good. Becky.
I've said one, which would be the behaviour change side of things, because it just makes it twice as hard for us to, one, sell retrofit as a concept, and then two, sell Furbnow as the choice for you to start. It's doubly as hard to get started for any company.
One of the questions here, if you want to pick it up, remember, is there a piece of legislation or something which you might need to unlock it? But it can be anything like.
But the second one I was going to come up before coming into that is talking about the supply chain, and I know it gets talked about in general terms. What I want to see is a proper training programme put in place across the different skills that are required, not only new entrants, but also transitioning existing skills. And aside from that, we get the entry point, the CPD that comes afterwards as well. And I think Octopus have done a tremendous, you've just gone ahead and put it in place rather than it being in place. And there's like Aero Academy that's being put. So the private sector is just doing it now, but is that what we're looking for, just private sector led? does that actually give the impact? That's mainly heat pumps as well. What about the insulation installers, ventilation? We've already got a lot of solar panels, battery. There's a lot of other segments that need to be looked at to have this transition to get things put in. And the CPD element always gets missed as well. There's not really thinking about the whole life cycle of these careers. And no advertisement as well. Like, you wouldn't know how much you would make as an installer. You make a lot of money, but nobody knows that as like an alternative career opportunity as well.
Very good. I wouldn't be surprised if people in the room. We're going one last time. Last couple of questions. I'm expecting a question from over here too, guys. Come on, your slackers. One over here. Okay.
Exciting stuff for me. Or what could we do? For me, electricity is still far too expensive. If people are going to move to heat pumps and electric vehicles, it needs to be cheaper. I think it's absolutely insane that we have a single wholesale price for electricity, regardless of where you are in the country right now. It means we're all paying the most expensive cost of the most expensive fuel, which is usually a fossil fuel. It's madness. Locational pricing, where each area has pricing based on supply and demand in their area, would see average prices fall everywhere and would have incredible benefits, like Scotland would have the cheapest electricity in Western Europe. It would unlock innovation, it would make things like heat pumps and electric vehicles far more economical, and would give us lots of price signals to send to customers.
And we all should be looking for the windiest place to live.
Yeah.
You've got a question here, but let's get one over here. Goodness me. Yep. While we're doing that, oh no, we've gone mic only. All right, good point. That's all right.
Hi, yeah, thank you. It's very interesting. Bouncing off on your last comment, I think it's true. What is it that we can make that will reduce this ratio, which is crazy, between gas and electricity, which just kills the payback? Zonal pricing, maybe, but it seems also that's something that is going to be very complex to entangle, but was maybe announced, but it's going to take time. What about actually tackling those taxes that are underlying, that have been talked about for so long, and that just don't make sense structurally? And then the other one, which I think is here, but waiting for it, is what about hydrogen boilers, and maybe just like they did with a new standard, banning those or being amended on heat pumps, which would be quite strong. What do you think of that?
Hydrogen boilers, there's controversy. Could we get a question in here? And then, well, I'm just seeing if there's any other quick ones on we've got already. A question while you're just doing that. Do local authorities have much leverage to influence behaviours to the level we need, and when they're against the corporate world,
evil.
Who have massive influence? Think about that one too. Very good. You're on.
I'm on, okay. I have a question. So behavioral change requires mindset change. And to change mindsets, you have to educate us so that we can understand what you're offering. Can you provide us with examples of how are you educating us as customers, consumers, so that we can come with you in that journey? Because if you don't educate us, we don't know what we don't know. So can you walk me through actual examples of how you're educating us, please? Thanks.
Very good. So this is the last round, guys, because they're all expiring in the room. Luke, you want to go first?
I guess naturally I should take the local authority one. I mean, so the same report that David quoted right at the start, this sort of 62% is all actions kind of involve some kind of behaviour change. They also look at the same question of where people influence. And so local authorities are estimated to have 2 to 5% of actual emissions under their control, but they can influence a third of emissions. And it goes back to that question at the start about like who people trust when they go to. So I think there's two conclusions to that. One is local authorities have some influence, but they kind of have that influence only by going and building these partnerships. And so I think that's got to be the way for us everyone not to look at just what's in front of them, and to kind of build these partnerships to make it happen. So that's
Right, Becky, any questions you want to answer? Any last comments too?
I was going to come back on like, what are we actually doing? I will say this is obviously from a startup perspective where our budgets are not ginormous and I cannot do a national campaign. So we think about it in stages of the funnel. And when people come to us, we've done a lot of research on kind of what the messaging is that works. And how we've done that is we've literally spoken to hundreds of people to talk about the language they use when they're starting to think about home improvement and energy improvements to their home. So everything is built around language people use, so it's in a more accessible format. So that's just the start point, positioning it in the right way, in the way that people are already talking about it already. And then practical things that we do, lots of kind of informational parts, guides, bits that we can give to you. If you speak to any of our operations team, they're all retrofit trained, so they can't give you exact advice on your home, but you can at least start to have a little bit of indication of what the impact would be before proceeding with us as well. And then we run things like webinars, for example, just giving you a friendly face, also an opportunity for us to ask questions as well. But we have to think about it in a bit of a scalable manner because we do have to be kind of conscious about our resources. And like other ways that we're doing this as well, the local authorities that we're working with is trying to step back and think. So key learning from the Birmingham trial that we did, and obviously they're in trouble a little bit at the moment, is that doing a retrofit one-stop shop is a complete waste of time now, because they need to be doing the comms campaign, which means that people in the residents in the area are aware of the grants, they know where to go, and kind of, but basically giving our research to local authorities to think about it, what's the best way to use their budget, and trying to influence the stakeholders that we're working with so they can also connect with people more effectively as well.
Pete.
Nice. So back to the points, I think, yes, let's move levies off electricity and I'd say into general taxation. There's also an argument about moving green levies onto gas use, which I think is politically difficult, but makes a lot of sense. I'd say move it into general taxation. The other point was around hydrogen boilers. Well, yeah, okay, we should ban them. Ultimately, though, I think probably that is the wrong thing to do, because innovation requires people to take experiments and make mistakes, and I don't think it's right for anyone to go, this is definitely the right way forward. I think we need a multitude of ideas and experiments. Still, hydrogen boilers are a terrible idea. And there was a third point as well, wasn't there, that you touched on, which was...
Don't know, we're probably out of time, so you might have to come and catch him afterwards. But I just look to say thank you to our panel, thank you to everyone for enduring the heat. I'm incredible, some people wearing their jackets and even a lined coat, which is, you should be studied by science for how you managed to do that in the last half hour. And thanks also for questions online. Look, it's such an important area. How can we twin the technical side of it with the human, the behavioural? A great challenge for us all. So thank you to the panel and enjoy your next session.